2025 was a tale of two realities for learning and development teams. Some stepped into CEO level priorities, while others lost their seat at the table. I saw it firsthand, working with hundreds of L&D leaders across the Fortune 500. Those L&D teams that help people truly learn at the speed of change became champions of enterprise-wide AI and culture transformation. Meanwhile, teams stuck in delivering click content and check-the-box training lost budget and influence, even as employees needed more support, reskilling, and clarity than ever before. There's no shortage of noise today. Big promises about the future of L&D. Endless talk about AI. But inside many organizations, the reality has been far more complex. With all this noise, I find myself seeking out real wisdom. Not theories or hot takes, but hard-won insights from people who are in the arena. That's what my podcast, The Science of Excellence, is about. Talking to world-class L&D and talent leaders about the truths beyond buzzwords and headlines. In 2025, I had the privilege of speaking with 21 executives from organizations like Walmart, McKinsey, Siemens, and LinkedIn, who are doing some of the most thoughtful, cutting-edge work in the field. In this compilation, I'm excited to share my favorite insight from every episode. Enjoy.
If we actively process the information by elaborating, thinking about the meaning of what we're hearing or repeating it to ourselves or somehow connecting it with what we already know, we're engaging our working memory, which is our prefrontal cortex's kind of mental workspace. And this kind of active processing makes it possible for the next step, encoding, to occur. And then if we have encoding, that's really the first big step towards developing long-lasting learning. And the hippocampus structure basically acts like a binding hub. When we experience something, we take in things through different senses, so we can create a cohesive short-term memory trace. So it's like something that our brain can store.
I hear this all the time. I go out to these L&D conferences and people will say, so how do you go about picking a new LMS? How do you go about picking a new training delivery tool? And most advice is get what you need. I really don't like that advice. You get what works. You need to get the technology that really makes learning stick. There's 700 LMSs out there. I guarantee 95% of them have not thought about this, let's build a piece of software that really makes learning stick.
While you're being dazzled by all the new tech, don't forget about the fundamentals of how adults learn. Make sure you're always grounding yourself back in the fundamentals. Those aren't changing. Make sure that you're building from those.
I think the biggest issue is you still have to be smart. You still have to ask great questions. You still have to have discernment. I mean, how many stories have you seen where, an LLM come up with some verbiage, put it in a document, and it's just not true? Critical thinking skills become even more important. That's something that is easy to get lost in the excitement of moving towards new ways to use these technologies, is to realize they're really great, but they're not perfect yet. You still need to ask questions and ask good questions.
An effective onboarding program that's been mapped out specifically for a specific role or an individual, it's going to tie directly into their day-to-day responsibility. Providing relevant tools, examples, scenarios, we're kind of getting their hands and what they're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. Automatically, you're taking it from that more generalized experience to a more effective experience. One of the main questions new hires have is, what's my day-to-day going to look like? A lot of the times, onboarding at scale, it's really hard for folks to answer that if they're not like a direct leader of that team.
I look at motivation in the sense of who are they as a person and what motivates them on their own. I don't want to force motivation. I don't want to fake something up. Here's your pizza party, right? That's always the joke going. But look at that learner of who you are as a person outside of work. Because what happens with people is they'll do what they have to get by at work, but outside of work is where they chase their passions, where they engage in stuff.
Even though that content, that dish, that meal might be personalized for you, that doesn't mean that you're actually going to apply it or retain it without the help of others. I'm a total big believer, and there's a lot of science behind this. People work best if there's someone else that's learning with them.
Now we're thinking about it in that exact same framework of, would you pay for this? As an L&D leader, if I'm vetting content, would I pay for this? Is it going to make a big enough impact for me? If we're doing this for external employees, we sure need to do this for our internal employees too. Just because it's not revenue generating doesn't mean we're not loyal to our employees internally. That trickling into, now let's compare it to the internal work that we're doing and make sure that's on par also.
when you are constantly getting lists of requirements and only looking at a problem when someone tells you this is the problem, this is the scope, go build this, and then you give it back to someone else. Like, you can never be strategic because you're, by its very nature, taking in orders and instructions. Product really is something that adds value to an end user. The big difference between product versus project is a project by its nature is supposed to end, while a product goes on in perpetuity. And so if you kind of think about what the product operating model really is, it's how your team is set up to serve those different products that eventually go to your end user versus kind of being siloed in ways in which traditional organizations operate.
Leaders who remember their humble beginnings as it relates to this topic tend to do better when it comes to investing in their people.
One of the ideas we talk about in the book is this concept of truth telling, where a media company CEO, he realized as he became CEO that people stopped telling him the truth. So he did have a sense of purpose and a clear vision, but he also needed to understand how the customers were reacting to the product launches and how the frontline was truly feeling.
We encourage people to be the brightest shining star in the sky. Like, you've got to be intrinsically motivated to do that, right? But like, when you take a step back from that big star, like, there's other stars in the sky. And then how do you think about, I'm going to build my constellation here, and like all these stars around me are just going to illuminate something much brighter.
Personal development, it's about intentionally going through certain journey in life that gets you in a better place than you were before. When you talk about the inner journey, it's about having introspection. The outer journey involves you as an individual and other people. Either you are getting feedback around your growth or learning, or you're getting coaching, or you are intentionally placing yourself in a challenging environment that allows you to continuously learn.
What I don't think works is just laid back watching videos. You need to be able to feel it. You need to be able to learn from peer to peer. And it can't be one-off. You can do the best workshop in the world, the best keynote in the world, the best resource, but the day after is what determines the success of the capability that you're building.
If there is a job where, the higher order tasks are not clear, that's where there's a little bit more of a resistance in terms of the Gen AI adoption. And jobs where the higher order tasks are a lot more clearer and, there is a visibility vision towards it, that the pull, factor for that is a lot more higher. Why my team is super excited about, using Gen AI tools is because if they do that, they will be able to focus a lot more on the strategic aspects of it and the org design, on the leadership building aspects of it.
AI can help us. Like, I was actually preparing for this chat with you, like asking ChatGPT a number of questions. How would you say this? How do you say it? It helps you become superhuman in a way, but it can only say what it learns from the past. For us to truly be innovative and to solve some of these extremely big problems that we're facing, we actually need creative thinking. And for us to create creative thinking, we need to collaborate with others, and we need to build that trust that can only be built through connection and collaboration.
When you, as a leader, sketch a problem that invites in collaboration, as opposed to proselytizing the answer and saying only you have the answer and everyone should follow, is what really encourages and more deeply engages people into that type of direction.
Organizations that are not averse of putting together people in a room who come from different generations, where they can have open conversations respectfully, meaningfully, without really pulling each other down. Leaders and managers who see that and who say that, hey, to be able to harness this diversity, I need people in the room who are diverse and working with each other, and who really push people to collaborate in that fashion.
When I joined here, I started using that word decomplexify. And someone actually said to me, that's not a word, Phil. You've made a word up. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I made a word up. But I think we are making things way more complex than they need to be. That has become a word I use often. We need to decomplexify things, not sit in a skills governance spin or skills taxonomy spin.
Rather than layering on more information, which is what I see happen, it's being a lot more intentional about how you are communicating with people. So I'm all about reducing the noise. So do we really need to tell people this, or can we incorporate that into something else that we already have instead of the one-off tactical just shooting stuff out?
The thing I'm most worried about is how are you going to keep your people engaged while redefining how we're all working. Some people may not see the benefit of working in this new way right away, or they may want that linear, more traditional career path because that's what they expected. A lot of organizations are saying things like, don't expect to get promoted every 2 years like people have in the past, but they're not telling us what we can expect. Really work on that messaging, right? So that you're keeping your employees bought in to there are opportunities in working in new ways.